Hello, YouTube family. Just yesterday had a couple of teeth removed, so I'm still a little sore, a little swollen. I didn't plan on doing a video today, but because of the acquittal of Donald Trump in his second impeachment trial in the Senate today, I decided I needed to do a video. I just want to make sure and get my 2 cents in, whatever it's worth. But I'm going to start by playing the video, a short clip of the speech McConnell made. It was a BS speech, but here it goes.
American citizens attacked their own government. They used terrorism to try to stop a specific piece of domestic business they did not like. Fellow Americans beat and bloodied our own police. They stormed the Senate floor. They tried to hunt down the Speaker of the House. They built a gallows and chanted about murdering the Vice President. They did this because they'd been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth. Because he was angry he'd lost an election. Former President Trump's actions preceded the riot were a disgraceful duty. The House accused the former president of, quote, incitement. That is a specific term from the criminal law. Let me just put that aside for a moment and reiterate something I said weeks ago. There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president. And having that belief was a foreseeable consequence of the growing crescendo of false statements, conspiracy theories, and reckless hyperbole, which the defeated president kept shouting into the largest megaphone on planet Earth. The issue is not only on January 6th. It is not just his endorsement of remarks in which an associate urged, quote, trial by combat. It was also the entire manufactured atmosphere of looming catastrophe, the increasingly wild myths about a reverse landslide election that was somehow being stolen, some secret coup by our now president. Now, I defended the president's right to bring any complaints to our legal system. The legal system spoke. The Electoral College spoke. As I stood up and said clearly at that time, the election was settled. It was over. But that just really opened a new chapter of even wilder, and more unfounded claims. The leader of the free world cannot spend weeks thundering that shadowy forces are stealing our country and then feign surprise when people believe him and do reckless things. Now, sadly, many politicians sometimes make overheated comments or use metaphors. We saw that unhinged listeners might take literally, but that was different. That's different.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there and go over. During the speech, McConnell's basically, he's sitting both sides of a fence that he helped put up. Donald Trump incited an insurrection against the United States government while he was president. He was impeached by the House of Representatives while he was president. And at that time, Mitch McConnell was the leader of the Senate. And he made the choice, saying that he wasn't going to hold the trial for the Senate. He kicked the can down the road and said that needs to be done by after the next Senate is seated. And that is the Senate where Democrats technically took control. There was a 50-50 split, but since Kamala Harris has the tiebreaker, technically Democrats have control of the Senate. So during his speech, Mitch McConnell made the comment that by the time we're doing the trial, Trump's out of office. He made that choice for the trial not to take place until Trump was out of office. That was McConnell's choice. 1. 2, the entire argument by the 43 Republicans who voted not to convict Donald Trump was that this Senate impeachment trial was unconstitutional because Donald Trump was out of office, which is completely untrue. From my perspective, and the thing is, they can have a perspective that they think it is unconstitutional. The thing is, the Senate is not the body in this country that determines constitutionality. It's not their job. It's not within their scope. That is literally the scope of the judiciary branch in the United States government. And it is literally the only role the Supreme Court has is to determine constitutionality. And if the Senate really, and I want to make this very clear, if the Senate really thought this trial was unconstitutional, there's a route you can go to get that proven, and that route is to sue. They could have sued the Democrats' prosecution, gone to court, and if the court comes back and says, oh, it's constitutional, it can happen, then they appeal, and they appeal until it goes to the Supreme Court. And once the Supreme Court makes a decision, it's done. Once the Supreme Court makes a decision about anything, at that point, it is settled law. I want to make sure people understand that this whole thing being unconstitutional, that is not settled law. Courts have not made any decision on that. There is no settled law in the argument that it is unconstitutional. It's opinion. And you had Rand Paul, who brought up the vote that it's unconstitutional that all these Republican senators signed on to. Rand Paul, the eye doctor senator, and apparently thinks he's a constitutional law expert. But the thing is, the Senate was basically telling the Supreme Court, you can go home, we'll do our job and your job. We're going to determine this is unconstitutional unilaterally on our own. The truth is, the GOP, as I've said before, has no balls, no backbone. They're afraid of the GOP voters. They're afraid of these crazy Trump fanatics in this cult. And honestly, they have good reason to be. What we're talking about is this insurrection in the Capitol, in which there were a number of lawmakers, both Republican and Democrat, who just barely escaped the cult group breaking in, and some of those people were almost caught up in the rioters. And so, they have reason to fear, because they have helped create and foment this monster that is now this piece of the Republican base, whether it's 5% or 95% of the base, however much it is. From polling, it looks like it's around 68%, honestly. The polling of people who believe Donald Trump won the election and was cheated, the people who are okay with the riot, the breaking into the Capitol, the people who are okay with their political enemies being killed, it seems like in polls of registered Republicans, it's around 68% of them that are that crazy bunch, which is a massive amount. We're talking over 74 million people voted for Trump in 2020. 68% of that's a very massive number, tens of millions of people. So the Republicans, they're afraid of this crazy base they've helped create. They didn't want to have to make a decision. They didn't want to sit here and look at in the Senate and look at the evidence presented. And I got to tip my hat to the House prosecutors. Jamie Raskin and his team did a fantastic job. They presented a very solid case. They very easily proved their point. And the Republican senators were basically saying, and that's why you have some that didn't show up. Some of them, reports of people like Hawley and Cruz sitting there doing other things, not paying one bit of attention. Because in their minds, they said, oh, we've already determined this is unconstitutional, so we're not going to participate. That's basically what they did. And then they voted not to convict, because they're like, we can't convict because it's unconstitutional. They built themselves a straw man argument on this, based on nothing, because it is not settled law that this is unconstitutional. And as far as I know, in their Federalist Papers, the framers of this country who created this whole process had commented that it was better to impeach a president who is already out of office, because that will not interfere with the presidential duties if they're already out of office and they get impeached. So as far as all this goes, I mean, I can't say I know how courts would rule or how the Supreme Court would rule, but I see no way that the Supreme Court is going to leave in place, as Jamie Raskin put it, a January exception. Basically, the idea that if a president's out of office, he can't be impeached anymore. Therefore, in that last 20 to 30 days, he can do whatever the hell he or she wants. They're untouchable by law. That's absurd to think that exists in this country. But the House proved their case. The Republicans set up their straw man argument that we're going to consider it unconstitutional and not play along. And that's how they got to where they didn't have to make a decision. They didn't want to piss off this crazy base they've got. And part of it is because people like certainly Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, they're hoping to run for president in the near future, 2024, 2028. They're wanting this base to support them. They didn't want to piss them off when they're going to try and run for office. You have others who are just afraid. I mean, some of them were nearly possibly killed by these rioters. They don't want to be killed. You've had, and the thing is, we all know Trump, Mitch McConnell was going through this, Trump inside of these rioters. Yeah, we all know that. We all know it. Whether you deny it, admit it, or whatever, we all know the truth. Trump's the one who incited this. He incited an insurrection. He should have been impeached. And part of the role that comes with impeachment is after he's convicted in the Senate, they can vote to have him barred from ever re-entering public office. That's the key thing after the impeachment, is to bar him from office again. So he's out of the equation. You have the argument that, and Mitch McConnell was saying, he can still be, tried in criminal court. Not going to happen. For any of you who are hoping on criminal court to solve this for us, I hate to break it to you, I don't believe anybody is taking Donald Trump to criminal court for this insurrection. He might go to, now I'm losing my train of thought. He might be sued personally. The police officer was killed. Their family could sue Trump, but that's not a criminal case. And the thing is, what people have to understand is that there's a difference between a Senate hearing, a Senate trial on convicting a president of impeachment, and a criminal court case. Once it goes to criminal court, you're under the laws of how courts have to operate. And that is, one, Trump walks in innocent. You have to prove that he's guilty of inciting the insurrection. And one of the things you have to prove in criminal court is you have to prove, they call it the actus reus and the mens rea. You have to prove the criminal act, and you have to prove the criminal intent. Intent is the difficult thing to prove in court. Intent is the part where cases usually end up failing, is proving what's in somebody's mind. And with Trump, you're going to have to prove that he gave his speech that morning with the intent of people assaulting the Capitol. You're going to have to prove that that was his intent in his speech. And I don't see it happening. In the Senate, all you have to do is prove that he incited this insurrection, that he gave this crazy speech along with the other people, Giuliani, Trump Jr. that spoke, fired up this crazy audience who then went and stormed the Capitol. That was proven. We all know that's fact. In criminal court, the level of proof is much different. The level of proof is you have to prove that Trump committed a criminal act, then you have to prove he had criminal intent. And you have to prove it beyond any reasonable doubt. The thing is, I don't see any way that anyone's taking Donald Trump to court over inciting an insurrection. He's not going to criminal court over it. He might be personally sued by people who are injured or killed that day. Relatives, loved ones of people who are injured and killed that day may personally sue Donald Trump, and he can be held personally liable for what happened, because that's also a different level of proof. You just have to prove that he contributed to this action that injured or killed a loved one. With O.J. Simpson, for instance, he went to criminal court. He was acquitted. He then got sued by both the families, and he lost the personal lawsuits, because they didn't have to prove he did it in those cases. The level of proof was much lower to get money out of him in the lawsuit. And so it's possible Trump could be personally sued by people involved, but I don't see any way that any lawyers taking him to criminal court, charging him with inciting an insurrection and trying to prove it criminally in court. That's the problem. You have people saying, well, he's still subject to criminal court. Yeah, somebody's got to bring it. And as good as these lawyers were, and Jamie Raskin and the team he had, obviously very talented litigators, very knowledgeable, very talented at what they do. They did a very good job, superb job. But they're not going to drag Trump into criminal court. They know they won't be able to prove it in criminal court because the level of proof is so high. And so these people are saying, it couldn't be done in the Senate. It was unconstitutional. No, that is not settled law. It is not unconstitutional. There's a process the Republicans could have gone through if they believed it was unconstitutional. Like I said, they could have sued, taken it to court. The problem is a decision is going to come back. And that decision that it is constitutional, then the Republicans are stuck. They have to either convict or not convict, and then they're going to be asked why they didn't. And now, as it is, they voted not to convict, and the reason is, well, it's unconstitutional. Something that's not at all settled. Not at all. It is not settled law. So they created themselves a BS escape route from doing their jobs in this situation. And I want to make sure that's clear that most likely it's over. The Trump inciting the insurrection, it's over. It's done. He's not going to go to criminal court for it. I don't see anybody taking him to criminal court for it, charging him with a crime and trying to prove it in court. And he can hold office again. He can run for president again in 2024 because the Senate did not do their job. And that's where we're at. The Republicans are so spineless and so weaselly, they just will not do their jobs. And the thing is, if this was a Democrat president, I would be saying the same thing. There comes a point where we have to hold politicians accountable. It's so frustrating that we let the politician class in this country hold themselves above the law, which is what they're doing right now. And if Democrats did the same thing, they would be holding themselves above the law. We can't allow that. We can't allow politicians to keep being lawless, or they will keep being lawless. You're not going to solve the problem by letting them do this garbage. And so hopefully some of these people will get voted out of office. I'm starting to lose hope on that. I mean, and to her credit, Susan Collins voted to convict. I really didn't think she would. I don't know if she's not planning to run for re-election again. She just got re-elected in November, so she's got 6 years ahead of her. She's pretty old. I think she's in her late 70s. She may not be planning to run for re-election. That may be why she chose to convict. I believe Pat Toomey, one of the other Republicans who voted to convict, has already said he's retiring after his term. He's not running for re-election, so there's no repercussions on him politically. You know, for somebody like Mitt Romney, he's still young enough he could run for president again in 2024. You know, he just had the courage to vote to convict. Lisa Murkowski, there's at least a couple of times now, 2 or 3 times, that she appears to have followed her conscience. The guy from Louisiana, I can't remember his name, voted to convict. He was one of the ones who agreed with the unconstitutionality. Then when he saw the presentation of the Democrats, he said he was going to keep an open mind and watch it, and he ended up voting to convict. I mean, he seems like somebody who literally did his job. He said, I'm going to watch the presentation, and I'm going to vote based on that. And he said, yeah, the Democrats proved their case. Trump incited this insurrection. He deserves to be held accountable. So, I mean, credit to the Republicans who did have the backbone. You know, one of them, possibly 2 of them, aren't running for re-election, so there was less pressure on them. But as far as Trump's going to get his in criminal court, don't count on it at all. I don't see any way anyone is dragging him into court for that. There are other things he's been getting investigated for, he could still go to court for. And maybe you'll feel like, well, if he gets convicted on these other crimes that he's committed and ends up going to prison, then I'll feel okay. I mean, if he serves time in prison, then he cannot run for office again. He is precluded from running for office. So, I mean, there's that possibility. But the brunt of the matter is the Senate could have convicted him and then could have voted to have him barred from re-entering public office. That was their job. That is literally one of the Senate's jobs in the Constitution. And you have 43 Republicans who chose not to do their job. And that's sad. It's unfortunate. It's where we're at. But I just wanted to make sure I put my thoughts on the matter out there and try to parse some of the BS, because Mitch McConnell's speech, although some people may have watched the speech and said, he knows Trump did it. Well, yeah, he knew from the get-go Trump did it. They all did. All 43 Republicans who voted not to convict know Trump incited this insurrection. When you had Lindsey Graham and Tommy Tuberville and Kevin McCarthy, the GOP minority leader in the House, when rioters were storming the Capitol, they didn't call me. They didn't call you. They didn't call Nancy Pelosi. They didn't call Joe Biden. They called Trump, because they also knew on that day who started this and who could call it off. That's why they called Trump. That's why Lindsey Graham called Trump. That's why McCarthy called Trump. That's why Tuberville called Trump. They knew Trump had the ability to stop it. And now we know, because of what's come out of these calls, that Trump knew Pence was in danger. He knew there were Republican Congress people that were in danger, and he did not care. He was okay if they died, because he felt like they had betrayed him by not finding a way to keep him in office. That's the truth. And it's unfortunate that Republicans are too spineless to do their job, to stand up like men and be men. They just weren't. They didn't have the ability. And that's where we're at. Thanks for watching, and please like, subscribe. You can ring the bell, tell your friends. If you like the videos, pass it on to your friends. Pass it on social media. help me get a broader audience, I would appreciate it. Anyway, thanks for watching.